Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Indeed, the people of Gaza are teaching all of us a lesson in what it means to be true to this deen, true to the flag of Islam, true sacrifice. What is the meaning of sacrifice? What is the price of progress? What is the cost of how we move from a position of extreme weakness to a new spring, which is fueled by the blood of our martyrs in Gaza? Today, I talked about in this khatira some of the positive effects, some of the broader implications of this conflict in Gaza. One of the things that happened before this conflict broke out was, as I mentioned, The Economist had at its front page the fact that the Saudis and the Israelis and the US were on the cusp of a normalization agreement. Of course, we need to understand this agreement and normalization and what is its purpose. Its purpose is creating a strategic framework for the Middle East which bypasses Iran. In other words, you have a US-Israeli strategic framework for security, and who is left out of that arrangement but Iran? And then after this initiation of this conflict, suddenly you have the reality that no strategic framework in the Middle East can be taken out without consideration of Iranian interests. But broader, what you see from countries across the Middle East is talk of a regional framework of security and not of an international framework. In other words, we need to have good neighbors. Our neighbors need to be our good friends as a priority over international interests. And in fact, this is what the Turkish government for many years had as its policy, that it wants to be friends with all of its neighbors, no matter what the international community is saying about that. And of course, the main group that the international community would complain about is Iran in that framework. And then we have, in the larger context, the fact that we have two major powers, Russia and China, who have as very much their expressed interest in creating a different framework for international cooperation, development, economic framework for the world, to the point that we have them developing an alternative banking system. So you all use, for wiring money overseas, this thing called SWIFT. And SWIFT is a banking system created in the West to allow banks to rapidly transmit money between each other. And of course, the SWIFT system was weaponized against the Russians during the Ukraine war to confiscate large amounts of their money and to prevent them from conducting economic transactions. And they responded, which we know for many years has been in development by them, to develop an alternative economic framework, a different method of transmitting money between banks outside of the SWIFT system. And that, to be honest, is something more powerful than almost any military action that you can think about in this world. Because there's a monopoly on economic transactions by European banks and American banks and the Western system. And when you have an alternative, suddenly you eliminate one of the levers of power for the Western system. And of course, we live here, we want, our economic system to progress. But there should be no doubt that for the benefit of the world itself, there needs to be multipolarity, a balancing of major interests, and not the unconditioned control of one person or one entity and their interests. And so this is inevitably a positive development for the world, that there are these competing systems which are now coming online. And in fact, they are encouraging different parts of the Muslim world to listen to them and to allow the powers, the Western powers, to come now to the table as one of different competing interests to try and get the best deal and not act as people who dictate, but rather as people who engage in proper discussions between countries. So I think when we look at the broader scope of what's happening in the world, inevitably you'll see a positive outlook for Muslims in any conflict, because we now have the ongoing movement of our traditional countries from their colonial superpowers moving to a multipolarity view. You know, you have in North Africa, you see the continued differentiation of people away from French interests, countries moving away directly from French direct control or exact marching in step with French interests to a multipolar viewpoint and gap between what the French want and what the local population wants. And you see that in much of North Africa and Central Africa, but also you see that throughout the world. And so I think what we see in Gaza and the reactions of countries around the world is that increasingly it is becoming harder for Western powers to maintain a single line of thought on a conflict. In fact, to the point that they had to ban all sorts of things related to media. You know, in Israel, they banned viewing terrorists, they said terrorist videos. And what they didn't define exactly what that was. In the same way, they're trying to ban similar social media use in Europe. And the reality for them is that the world has become more accessible towards all sorts of information, and it's going to become increasingly difficult to control this type of world, and it's increasingly better for Muslims in terms of their own interests, that they will be able to further their interests in a way which was never possible before. And so it is now, for us, no better time to insist that Muslim countries and Muslim powers come together, that they support each other in times of need, that they develop their own pole of interest and security, because of these weakening of these ties and these levers that were put on them ever since colonialism started. So I'm going to, hopefully we've we fixed some problems there, no? We haven't fixed it. But we can start. I'm going to give it to our guest speaker, inshallah, so we can hear from him. And inshallah, we'll continue afterwards. I'll talk at the end, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين. Dear brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are awfully sorry about this technical delay. I am Muhammad Abdidaim from Egypt, and I'm just visiting Raleigh, and I really registered my admiration of what's going on here regarding education in particular. Nice to meet you again, and it's still the same topic decided by the IAR leadership. They asked me to talk about Gaza again. The title or the topic decided by the leadership here is Some Lessons from War on Gaza. And I added to this topic, Gaza is re-educating the whole world. And this is really true. We are all overwhelmed with all taking place in Gaza. But before delving deeply into what's going on over there, I'd like just to recruit or adopt a term or a word from social sciences. And this word I have chosen deliberately because through which we can understand a great part of what's taking place in Gaza. This term or this word is absurd. Absurd, yes. Allah ma'qul. In Arabic, Allah ma'qul. If we try to ponder or contemplate incidents, so many incidents around us in the world in general, we sometimes stop there and ask the great question: is this real? Is this really true happening? This is what we call absurd. Allah ma'qul al-hasil hawlana fil alam. Absurdity at the same time contain one of the connotations as paradox of judgment, paradox of reaction toward a certain specific subject or certain specific situation. And absurdity refers to or means unsound or ridiculous reactions toward certain specific situations or actions. And for sure we agree that what's taking place in Gaza is really absurd, is really ridiculous, is really unsound, is really unacceptable at all, by all means. Absurdity arises from the absence of rationality and the absence of justice. If there is no justice, for sure it means absurdity is over there. Absurdity can be normalized, and this is the danger of absurdity. Absurdity can be normalized or naturalized. I mean by this, sometimes some absurd actions or reactions can be normalized through or naturalized in a different community or in a different society through mass media and social media. Something abnormal, minds of people can be washed and change it to be normal, change it to be accepted. And this is what's taking place again in Gaza. Sometimes some people look at murder in Gaza as normal, as something normal, which is not normal at all if we use our minds and we use logic. I think all of us agree that what's taking place in Gaza is really absurd, and no one can deny that. For more than 16 years, Gaza is besieged, and the people in Gaza are imprisoned in this strip, and they are deprived from all human rights, deprived even from food, from water, from electricity, as you are following the media and talking about that all the time. Again, for more than a month, as Dr. Hassan mentioned, all right, okay, thank you. All right. That's me. All right, thank you. Absurdity can be normalized through mass and social media in particular, besides some channels or some ways of how to wash the minds of people and change, as we mentioned, the normal or the abnormal into normal. With this process, abnormal becomes normal. Murdering in Gaza may seem to some people as normal or as a normal action. All of it. Sorry, just, right. Now we want to the next one. Just this one. All right. Yes. In spite of the huge, for example, regarding to absurdity, Israel through 75 years have been trying to change the abnormal into normal. Israel, through certain specific institutions, tried for 75 years to change the minds of the people in Gaza, of the people in Palestine, of the people even outside, in the Arab area, in the Western world, to change the mentality of those people to accept the existence of Israel as normal on the lands or on the homeland of Palestine. But really, Israel failed to do this regarding the Gaza people, regarding the Palestinian people. Why do you think Israel failed to do this? It's education. It's education in Palestine. Through education, it's not only the schools, but fathers and mothers who all the time are holding the keys of their old homes in their hands and all the time inculcate in the minds of Palestinian young children that Palestine is for Palestinians and we will never leave our land at all. When we come to the last story of Hamas with Israel, they were motivated to launch the last attack essentially as the culmination of a long-building anger over Israel policy, including recent outbreaks of violence at Al-Aqsa and all the behavior of Israel towards the Palestinians in general, especially in Jerusalem and regarding what has taken place in Al-Quds recently. This is not the first battle of Palestinians against Israel, especially Hamas, and this is not the last one, and we hope it will be the last one. But after Palestinians get their rights of establishing their own state, independent state. Hamas proved to the whole world that, whatever the case may be, they will never stop asking for the right of Palestinians to have their own independent state. Again, Hamas proved to the whole world leaders that those leaders are wrongly helping Israel to kill Palestinians day and night, but they have proved to the leaders of the world that they should instead help Palestinians to get their right. There are some comments regarding what's taking place in Gaza. For example, Michael Beck, he is a defense writer from Israel, said, "How could more than 1,500 Hamas fighters storm into southern Israel without its defenders seeing it coming? Why did it take hours and days for the Israeli military to send reinforcements to rescue the stressed border towns and kibbutzim?" Here comes the big question. That includes humiliating of Israel. How Hamas could penetrate 10 miles inside Israel so easily and achieve that task in that easy way as it has been done. Michael Beck said, "It is really a great mystery of Hamas." And here he is praising Hamas and condemning Israeli army. Israeli eminent army leaders have no answer for such a question yet. They do not have answer for the great question, how could Hamas did what they did without Israel responding at the same level even? The question remains over there, how come an arrogant high-tech military was humbled and defeated in such a way by a low-tech challengers using big up trucks, bulldozers, and motorbikes? The small drones that knocked out Israel borders, sensors, and tanks, and the motorized paragliders that flew over the fence can be bought from online by any individual with a credit card. All of this is some sort of praising what Hamas has done, and at the same time humiliating Israeli army. This happened while technological arrogance was at the heart of Israeli disaster. For example, the media crawled over Gaza. This happened while Israel is controlling every tiny thing in Gaza. So how come Hamas could do this while imprisoned, while besieged, while deprived from all human rights, even food, and they could do this at the same time. It's a massive intelligence failure. At the same time, it's a massive intelligence failure for a nation that has basked in the glory of having mighty security apparatus. So when 50 years after the Yom Kippur Wars surprise assault, another attack was launched with a barrage of rockets, under the cover of which Palestinian fighters entered southern Israel by sea, land, and air. The confidence of Israeli people in their army has been taken to the core, and its impact on the Israeli psyche unprecedented. Again, what's taking place in Gaza has led to people's voices and riots against Israel and supporting Gaza. This is all over the world. The war in Gaza unleashed that people's loud voices may be louder than their nation's leaders' reactions and even decisions. All of us have been following the riots and demonstrations in all countries, great countries, capital cities like London, Paris, Berlin. All the people over there have been against Israel and as the same supporting Gaza or Palestinians. A wave, as a result of this, a wave of thoughts in minds of Zionists in Israel, with cries of peoples in so many capitals all over the world, led to some people like Nathan Sharansky to say, I believe we are seeing the beginning of the end of Jewish history in Europe. I see this as a historical moment, as the beginning of the process of distancing Jews from Europe. It is no longer fair to say that it's too dangerous for Jews to live in Europe. This is an outcome of what Hamas did in their last battle with Israel. There's no sound. No problem. It's okay. It's okay. In conclusion, at the end of the day, we can conclude that Gaza for sure stands there to tell the whole world that no one spot on earth is like me. This is what Gaza is saying to the whole world. No one spot on the earth is like me. Yes, Gaza is still talking. Yes, I am besieged for years and years, and my people are imprisoned and deprived from the basic rights of life. However, I will remain as Gaza as I am, whatever the price may cost. I will remain here standing with my chin up, defending my right till getting it. In spite of all of this, I could prove to the whole world that with my very poor weapons, but high morals and faithful intentions could defeat the arrogant army of our enemy. Long live Gaza. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Is it working?
البيت وشوفوا كيف كان مليان في كل مكان. يعني احنا اصلا مش حابين نعيش هذه المعيشة. المفروض احنا والحمد لله كانت هذه الحرب كثير صعبة علينا وكانت حرب قوية. يعني 7 شهداء استشهدوا في هذا البيت وشوفوا كيف كان مليان في كل مكان. يعني احنا اصلا مش حابين نعيش هذه المعيشة. المفروض احنا نعرف كيف حياة الألعاب، حياة الفرحة. عارفين هذا العدو ما بيعرف غير القتل والغدر فقط. بميزش بين أي حدا لو صغير لو كبير. يعني المهم اليهود بيفكروا عشانهم كتير قتلوا منا، بيفكروا انه خلص احنا حنترك ارضنا وحنكره ارضنا وحنعطيهم اياها وخلص حنستسلم. لكن احنا على الفاضي، كل ما هما بيعملوا زي هيك بتزيد عزيمتنا وبتزيد قوتنا، وباذن الله النصر قريب ان شاء الله وحننتصر عليهم. وهذا الكلام طبعا مش بعيد. ويسألونك متى هو؟ قل عسى أن يكون قريبا. قل عسى أن يكون قريبا.
متى يا مهجتي سأراك حرا؟ متى ستزول آثار الحروب؟
Do you need a translation? Sure? Okay, Dr. Hassan will do this.
Yeah, he's well, I won't do the whole translation, but you know, he has high spirits, and he's saying, inshallah, that no matter what happens, you know, he says that the victory is assured and is inshallah coming. I don't know if there's lots more in there. Maybe you can, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Anyhow, I just brought this short video just to show this little kid is talking with the tongue of an old man. This little kid is teaching us a lesson. This little kid is saying simple words, but really with great meaning, meaningful words. This little kid is saying that whatever our enemy is doing towards us, we will never leave our homeland. We will never leave our homeland at all, whatever the case may be. And at the end of his message, he just used a verse from the Quran. يسألونك متى هو قل قريبا. This is not the ayah. This is the meaning of the ayah. Yeah. They ask you when the victory will come. Tell them it will come very soon. So he is optimistic while he is amidst all this devastation and destruction. Thank you very much. Barakallahu feekum.
Yeah, we'll open up to any comments or questions. I can repeat it. Yeah.
My simple understanding, I am still surprised not see any voice from Muslim world, from leaders saying, maybe Turkey is saying, but it's still not like a strong message saying, enough is enough.
Yeah, so just for the people online, brother was saying he had a comment basically that based on the events that happened and how the response has been from the United States, that he feels like there was a mask that people were wearing and now they're taking it off and showing that in reality they're not third-party impartial governments, but rather a new form of crusaders or colonialists that are and that Israel is part of the United States, almost the 51st state, based on the level of unconditional support. And of course, the whole world was calling for a ceasefire, and the United States was against that. And of course, the natural result of that is the genocide that we're seeing. So that's just a summary, inshallah. Hopefully, I can summarize.
You just mentioned the term absurd again. Yeah. All what you mentioned, like, for example, the reaction of the Arab world towards what's taking place in Gaza, this is still absurd to me. I don't know whether it is absurd to you again or not. Yes, of course. But I'm talking about the near countries to Gaza, the next door countries to Gaza must have certain specific reaction that must be different from all the world. But they are not. They don't have. They didn't do. You see? So I agree with you regarding what you mentioned regarding a new crusade. Yeah, this is mentioned in so many reports that it is like this. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were asking are there Muslim countries that have stood up, or are they making some signs of standing up or creating their own structure? I think, these kinds of things take a long time. When you look at it over the course of weeks or months or even a few years, you don't notice it. But, for example, in Pakistan we had Imran Khan, who was the prime minister. He went to Russia to just negotiate to buy cheaper oil and gas. And when he came back, of course, he was deposed by the military government. And then Turkey tried to establish sort of their own security framework in the Middle East. And then Saudis basically led a movement against them. Eventually, they had to cave in and return to their common umbrella. So I think you're seeing some movement, but it's going to be fits and starts. It's going to be, somebody tries something and then he gets shot down. Qatar as well did the same thing. Tried to, many times we see Qatar is acting independently. They certainly do want to have their own foreign policy, but recently there was a news program where they invited a Saudi dissident to talk. And she said in that if the Saudis had normalized that bin Salman's, he would have been in fear for his life or he would have been deposed. And in fact, you look online, you will not find this program anymore. It's been pulled from Al Jazeera. And that was just recently. They had this on, and she had not been on Al Jazeera for almost, she said, 2 years. Because of Qatar's desire to normalize relationship with Saudi. But at the same time, you see what happened with Saudi. They had this very long, protracted war in Yemen against the Iranians, in particular their proxy, the Houthis. But what did they do? At the end of the day, they went back and they've had a rapprochement. They've had a peace deal with Iran. So I think what you're seeing is the initial kinds of cracks in the structure. People are coming back and putting some plaster on the crack and it's going back in place, but you see the outline of the crack. The building is no longer intact. And this is just one a blast which has destroyed a lot of the building, and now they're trying to patch it back together. again. And how many times when you destroy something, you put it back together, it never retains the original structure, the inner strength of the building. So this hegemony or this structure of that's existing, it's cracking. It's not something that in the speed that we would like, but I think there's a lot of things in place that unfortunately many of the Muslim countries put themselves in a position of extreme weakness. After all, Egypt has the highest debt to the IMF, maybe like the fourth in the world, third in the world. Argentina, there's Egypt maybe after them. In terms of how much they owe the IMF, and the same thing with Pakistan, how much they owe the IMF and the Chinese, and so there's a lot of structural reasons why many Muslim countries cannot move or haven't moved. But I think we're seeing the initial stages of a new order shaping, and we hope it doesn't lend to something like Afghanistan, where you had the Russians and the Americans fighting, and the people that were dying were the Afghans and all the Muslims. So, but rather that it leads to a new security structure where no one dares to enter in the first place to intervene, and you have your own framework by which to operate. I don't know if there's any other comments. Yeah.
What is his name? Assalamu alaikum. So, what is your name? Uday? Abdul Daim. Abdul Daim, okay. So, I have a thinking or feeling that one of the reasons that we as a Ummah are unable to unite is because of the Shia among us. Because if you look that why the Saudi Arabia is wanting some deal with Israel is because after the fall of Sayyid Saddam Hussein in Iraq, in the Arab world, there is no strong Sunni leader. And Saudi Arabia is very clearly seeing something that if it doesn't make a friendship with Israel, Iran and the Hezbollah and the Bashar al-Assad, they will take very soon the Gulf states. So I think one of the biggest problem is that the Shia among us, as we see what they did in 2003 when America criminal, they attacked illegally, criminally Iraq. They had no right to attack Iraq. America is a criminal, terrorist, and illegal attack on Sayyid Saddam Hussein. Then all of the Shia, they supported the attack against Saddam Hussein, even though there was no reason for America to attack. So they played the role. The Shia is always a problem. And I believe that we need to come up with this education with ourselves and realization that how we need to solve this Shia problem among us. Don't you think, Doctor, that this is the biggest problem?
What's your good name, please? Akhi Hussein, my brother Hussein. I may agree with you inside this room, but outside this room, I don't agree with you. You ask me why. Don't agree outside. As Dr. Hassan just mentioned, the situation all over the world is too sophisticated, too complicated. And whenever we find any relationship between us as countries, we should keep Sha'rat Muawiyah. You know Sha'rat Muawiyah. You know the Shara of Muawiyah. Yeah. We should keep close as possible as we can to each other. Iran is over there. People over there are saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay? You agree with me? They are saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And amidst all these sophistications all over the world, we must not revive such a sort of difference, such a sort of conflict, if you would like to call it a conflict, until we come together later on and unite, and we can talk about this. We can talk about this through logic, not through weapons, not through conspiracies, not through any evil. So, as I told you, I agree with you here in this room, inside the room, but outside the room, I don't agree. So, we'd like to keep in touch with Iran as a Muslim country, whatever creed they have, whatever beliefs they have. All right? I'll come to you. I'll come to you myself.
We organize these things. These things, it is inshallah. Yeah, because I don't, ask always, but since this is a topic and I think he's a learned man from Egypt, that's why I'm bringing this issue. You see, I don't talk much in these things, Yeah. So, Brother Abdul Daim, of course, they are saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but if you look at them, the Shia, what is their main purpose is to always weaken the Islamic countries and Islamic societies within the Islamic societies and the countries. If you see their goal of life, if you see their target, their manzil, their achievement is that they want to take over Haramain Sharifain. They want to, they are, yes, they are saying La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, but if you look at the Shia, what is their goal? Their goal is to weaken the Muslims. And you see this with clear eyes that Hezbollah is not joining Hamas, even though they are sitting right in the north of Israel. They are just saying things. But Hezbollah is not entering the conflict, right? They are just giving the bayan and all that. And so as Iran. So my suggestion is that all of the Sunni Muslims, they need to make some block, some military block, some military power, and they have to deal with this Shia problem, because Shia, they always act like the Western jasus or a Western agent within the Muslim Ummah. If you see 1400 years of history of our Ummah, we have always been damaged by the Shia, always. At every instance you see, this Ummah has been damaged by the Shia. In every instance you see, the qatl of Sayyidina Uthman, and you go on, the qatl of Sayyidina Hussein, you go on, the fall of the Delhi, the fall of the Muslim, the Sultanate Abbasiya. So we need to realize this, that why are we not able to unite the Ummah? Because of this Shia problem within us. They are living with us, but their goal of life is to weaken us, to kill us, to cheat us, because their agenda is absolutely against us. Right? They are enemy of the deen in the veil of enemy of Sahaba. They are enemy of the deen in the veil of enemy of Sahaba. Don't you think that we need to unite the Muslim Ummah?
Can I just comment on that? There was an interview with Khalid Mash'al, one of the Hamas leaders. they specifically asked him about his Hamas ties with Iran, them being them Shia and all that. He said there's not one Sunni country that came and offered us help. So he said when Iran came and offered his help, he said we're not gonna tell him no thank you. So there was not one, and it's on YouTube, he said there's not one Sunni country that came and wanted to give us help, anything, money, weapon, nothing. So you can look at that, inshallah, on YouTube. That's Khalid Mish'al.
Still, I have a word to say to Brother Mustafa. Brother Mustafa, you are asking for unification of Muslims. Yes, and we all ask for this and pray for this. When you say Shia must be away, must be discarded, unconsidered, neglected even, I don't agree with you. When you separate yourself from Shia, they will be taken by our real enemy to be against you. They will be functioned to be a real enemy with a real enemy. So, and all what you mentioned about Shia, all of us know very well what they are doing, what they believe, what are their reactions. But in fact, at the moment, in this very critical moment for Muslims all over the world, and Muslim countries in particular, we shouldn't even open this discussion about Shia. This is my own opinion, and you still have your right to say whatever you'd like to say. But I really don't agree to raise such a point of discussion about some Muslim, it's a Muslim country. You know, during the last 15 years, there has been trials and serious trials to have a close relationship between Egypt and Iran. So many trials. But after a while, and for no declared reason, we discovered that this project is broken. This project is forgotten. Why? Because the real enemy does not want Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Iran to be close, to have close relationship with each other. Because if these three countries, for example, and I'm not saying that any other country in the area come and have close relationships, this will change the map of the area in total. So I don't like to, I myself don't like talking about these differences and these issues regarding Shia and Muslim. And so excuse me if I have a different view. All right? Thank you.
This is one of the people said the best way to divide Muslims, you just bring one sheikh from this sect, one sheikh from this sect, and you just start fighting amongst each other until the day of judgment. You know, and I think this is unfortunate, but you know, it's not obviously all our fault. The Shia blame us, so we blame the Shia. There's many things they have done wrong, but the point I think is valid is that. In this time, when your enemy is at the gate, everyone should be under one flag. So, you know, in the other times, you can discover some ways to negotiate differences. I don't know how much time we have left. We have like 10 minutes or 15 minutes? We're over time. Okay, okay. خلاص. سبحانك اللهم نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. اللهم اجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول ويتبعون أحسنه. جزاك الله خير دكتور. عبد الدائم حفظنا اسمك يا شيخ، بارك الله فيك، أهلا وسهلا.